I wasn't supposed to come back to Wren, Georgia. Not after what happened in the 6th grade. Not after the girl disappeared. But Leah called me, said I should see something. It started with a child's drawing and a smell, that thick, earthy smell of fresh clay. She said it came from the art room, but the sink was dry. And the drawing, it was of a girl with no eyes and a mouth full of worms, drawn in clay, not paint, not pencil, clay, wet and cold. The last time I smelled that smell was the night Amber Collins came back. Amber Collins had been missing for 6 days. 6 nights of search dogs, helicopters, neighbors with flashlights yelling into woods. I was 11. I remember Mom keeping the TV on low, like the background noise could keep bad things out. Then Amber walked out of the woods, middle of the night, barefoot and covered in clay. Not dry, wet, like she just stepped out of a riverbed. It ran down her arms, clumped in her hair. She didn't speak, not to the paramedics, not to her parents. She just cried. But not with tears, with these choking, hiccuping sobs, like someone who hadn't breathed in days. Leah and I were in the same class when it happened. We weren't close back then, but we both saw her that first day she came back to school. Amber stared at her own reflection in the hallway mirror and screamed until the nurse sedated her. They painted over every mirror in the building after that. And Wren got quiet, real quiet. We always held our breath when it rained, and no one played near the old playground anymore. I found Leah standing under the gym's flickering exit sign, arms crossed, hair pulled back in that way she does when something's wrong. She handed me a Ziploc bag. Inside was a thumb. Not a real one, clay. Pale gray, like it hadn't dried right, still soft at the edges, pressed with fingerprints. She said she found it tucked in the pocket of a 2nd grader's coat. The kid didn't know how it got there. Same as before, I asked. Leah just nodded. I thought she might be joking until I saw her eyes. She hadn't slept. Her knuckles were raw. She said the girl who drew the no-eyes picture, Sarah, had started muttering in her sleep. Said she kept saying one word, below. Just that, over and over. That was when Leah told me something else, something I'd forgotten. Back when we were kids, before Amber vanished, we used to leave pennies in the sand at the playground. One for each person who played that day. Never more, never less. No one ever told us why. We just did it. But I remember what happened the one time we forgot. That's when Amber disappeared. The playground's still there. just behind the elementary school, past a row of rusted chain swings and a blacktop painted with faded hopscotch squares. They built a fence around it after Amber came back, locked it up with a sign that says, "Do not enter, ground unstable." But the ground was never the problem. Leah and I snuck in after dark. The gate still creaks like it remembers us. Creak. The sandpit is smaller than I remember, like it's been caving in. She handed me a flashlight and pointed near the slide. That's where they used to bury the pennies. Every kid knew the rule. You finished playing, you counted who was there, and you buried that number of pennies. No more, no less. We started to dig. Nothing deep, just enough to stir the surface, and after maybe 10 minutes, my fingers hit metal. I brushed the sand aside. It wasn't a coin, it was a mirror, cracked down the middle and buried face down, like someone wanted it hidden but still watching. Then Leah froze, whispered, "It's still wet." I touched the edge, clay, fresh, cold, alive feeling. And then the whispering started. Not words, not from one place, below us, like voices pressing up through the sand, just out of reach. We didn't run. We should have, but the sound, it didn't chase. It pulsed, like breath, like something sleeping just beneath the surface. Leah crouched beside the mirror, holding her breath. The flashlight flickered once, then again. She whispered, "It's waking up, Evan." I wanted to ask what she meant, but I remembered something. Amber Collins never screamed when she came back, not until she saw her reflection, not until she saw what was behind her in the glass. I flipped the mirror. My hand sank in, not all the way, just enough to feel that it wasn't solid anymore. The surface rippled like water, thick and cold, and behind the shimmer, there were eyes. Not mine. Something looking out, watching, waiting, hungry. Leah grabbed my arm, pulled me back. We didn't speak on the walk home, not until she stopped me outside her place and said, "Did you see it too?" I nodded. She looked up at her porch light like she wanted to cry. We never put our pennies back. The next morning, I drove to the Collins house. I hadn't seen Amber in years, not since she stopped coming to school. The house looked smaller now, weather-beaten, windows clouded. I knocked twice. Knock, knock. No answer. I turned to leave, and then the door creaked open. Amber's father stood there. He didn't look surprised to see me, just tired. "She doesn't talk to strangers anymore," he said. I told him I wasn't a stranger. He let me in. The living room smelled like damp soil. There were no mirrors, no glass at all, actually. Every picture was turned backward, every window covered with thick curtains and duct tape. He led me down a narrow hallway. Taped to the wall were dozens of drawings, crude, childlike, all in gray and red. Hands reaching through floors, mouths with too many teeth. A girl in a sandbox crying clay tears. We stopped at the last door. He didn't knock, just opened it. Amber was sitting on the floor, legs crossed, surrounded by small hand-shaped sculptures. Every one was facing the door. She didn't look at me, just whispered, "You shouldn't dig there." And then louder, "It remembers when we forget." I stepped closer, and then I saw it. Her hands weren't dirty. They were cracked, like clay left too long in the sun. I didn't speak on the drive home. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Leah called twice. I let it ring, but the third time I picked up. Her voice was tight, quiet. "There's something you need to see." She was already at the school when I got there. It was dusk. The playground gate was open. Someone had dug a trench across the sand pit. Neat, measured, like a grave. At the bottom were pennies, 27 of them, stacked in perfect columns, all polished clean. But the thing that made my stomach turn, they weren't the modern kind. They were old, real old. 1919, 1932, 1944. Some from decades before the school was even built. Leah whispered, "Evan, what if it's not about the kids now? What if it never was?" We stood there, staring into the trench. And then I noticed the pattern. The pennies were arranged around something in the middle, a shape just barely visible beneath the sand. I reached down, and the air changed. Cold, still, wrong. Leah grabbed my wrist. Her voice cracked. "Don't touch it." I looked at her, confused, but her eyes weren't on me. They were on the swing set. One of the swings was moving, slowly, swaying back and forth. There was no wind. We backed away from the trench. Slow steps, eyes fixed on that swing. It kept moving. Not wildly, just steady, deliberate, like someone was still there. Leah whispered, "It knows we're watching." I glanced at the sand again. Something was changing. The shape beneath the pennies, it was rising. Not fast, just enough that I could see its outline now. A head, shoulders, arms folded across the chest. It looked like someone had been buried alive in clay and was waiting to be remembered. I reached into my pocket, found a penny. Instinct, muscle memory, the kind you never question when you're a kid. I knelt and placed it beside the others. Nothing happened. No sound, no breath, but the swing stopped moving. The trench trembled, and then it collapsed in on itself, like the ground took a breath in reverse. The pennies vanished, the shape too. Leah exhaled hard. Her hands were shaking. "We put the right number back," I said. She nodded slowly. "For now." We both turned toward the exit, but then she stopped. Her face went pale. I followed her gaze. On the slide, scratched into the rusted metal, was a message that hadn't been there before. "You forgot someone." That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message. You forgot someone. I kept thinking about the pennies, 27 of them. But how many of us used to play there back then? Me, Leah, Amber, others. Too many names blurred by time. The number didn't feel right. It never did. Around 2 a.m., I called Leah. "I think we missed someone." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I know who." She asked if I remembered Joey Mathers. I didn't. Short kid, glasses, always wore a red hoodie. He used to hum to himself while digging holes, spirals, over and over. And then he stopped coming. There was no memorial, no note, no news. I whispered, "Did he move?" But Leah's voice was like gravel. "No, Evan, he never left." She told me something she'd never shared. The day Amber disappeared, Joey had been at the playground too, but he wasn't there when the police arrived. No one asked, no one noticed, like he was already forgotten. And we'd only buried 26 pennies that day. Now there were 27, too many. And still not enough. The next morning, I drove to the Wren Public Library. They keep yearbooks in the back, old ones, yellowing and cracked. I found the one from our 6th grade year, 2004. Flipped past smiling faces, teacher pages, Spirit Week photos. Then I reached the class pictures. There we were, me, Leah, Amber, and a space. Not a missing student, just a gap. No label, no explanation, just a sliver of white between frames. But someone had written in it, "Don't forget again." My fingers went cold. I checked the list of student names below the page. 26 names. There should have been 27. Joey wasn't there. Not even as a note, not even as a typo. It was like he'd been erased. I called Leah. Told her to meet me at the school. We were going to the source, to the old storage room behind the gym, the one they used before they built the new wing. It had been locked since before we graduated, but Leah had a key. Perks of being staff. The hallway smelled like dust and time. She unlocked the door. Inside, boxes, junk, old sports banners, and broken furniture. But in the corner, a desk. A child's desk. The kind they phased out years ago. And carved deep into the wood, barely visible under the dust, "I'm still here." Leah stepped back. I leaned closer and saw something stuffed in the storage slot underneath. A red cootie, caked in dried clay. Leah dropped her flashlight. The beam spun across the walls like it was trying to escape. I pulled the hoodie from the desk. It was stiff, heavy. The clay had hardened around it like a shell, but the inside was still damp. A smell rose from the fabric. Not rot, not mold, riverbed. The same smell that followed Amber back. I turned the hoodie over. There was something inside the pocket. A note, folded, crumpled, soaked through with brown stains. I unfolded it carefully. It wasn't a note. It was a list. Names. Each one scratched in with shaky, frantic strokes. Amber Collins, Leah Brandt, Evan Mercer, dozens more. Some I knew, some I didn't. And at the very bottom, scrolled over and over, "Not me, not me, not me." Leah whispered, "He wrote us down, so he wouldn't be the one forgotten." But the town forgot him anyway. She pointed to the corner of the room. There, pressed against the wall, was a shape. Child-sized, covered in dried clay, like a sculpture someone never finished. It didn't move, but I swear it was breathing. Shallow, slow. And behind it, a mirror. Not glass, not silver-backed, just polished clay. I stared into it and saw myself, but older. Eyes sunken, mouth filled with dirt. And beside me, Joey, still humming, still digging, waiting for someone to say his name out loud. Leah whispered, "We need to leave." But I couldn't move. The figure in the corner, I swore it twitched, just slightly, like a breath pulling clay. I blinked, and its head turned. No face, just impressions. Eyes that were never sculpted, a mouth never carved. It hadn't finished becoming, because no one remembered it. Leah pulled my arm. We backed toward the door. But the light behind us shifted, and suddenly the clay mirror on the wall rippled. Not shattered, not broken, opened. Inside was a room that didn't match the one we stood in. Smaller, darker. The walls were lined with shelves, each holding tiny, human-like sculptures, children. All of them had blank faces, no eyes, no mouths, no names. The mirror pulsed again, and we heard it. "You didn't leave enough." We ran, back through the hallway, past the old gym banners, through the exit Leah forgot to lock behind us. We didn't speak until we reached the parking lot. That's when Leah said it. "They're not haunting the school, Evan. They're haunting the ritual. The pennies, they're the offering." I looked at her. "And if we forget again?" She didn't answer, just looked past me at the swing set in the distance. One of them was swaying. Again, "Kliak, kliak." And this time, there was someone sitting in it. We didn't walk to the swing set. We couldn't. Just the sight of it from across the parking lot, the shape in the seat, the slow, measured sway was enough to freeze my legs. But Leah took one step forward, then another. I whispered, "Leah, don't." She didn't stop. When she reached the gate, the swing stopped moving. The figure stayed seated, its head turned slowly. Even from across the yard, I could see the gray along its shoulders, the dried clay cracking like old paint. Leah called out, "Joey?" The figure flinched, and then it began to hum, a soft, childlike tune, familiar, circular, the kind of melody that loops forever if no one interrupts it. I recognized it. He used to hum it while he dug holes in the sand, not to build castles, just to dig. Like he was looking for something, or making room for something else. Leah knelt by the edge of the playground and did something I didn't expect. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a penny. She placed it in the sand. Just one. Not part of a count. Not for a group. Just for him. The swing creaked again and stopped. The figure stood, turned to face her. Still no face, still no eyes, but it raised a hand and pointed at the sand. Leah whispered, "Dig." I stepped forward to stop her, but my foot hit something, a penny, and another. They were pushing up from the ground, dozens, hundreds, as if the earth was giving them back, rejecting them, or asking for more. The ground around us shifted, softening under our feet like wet sponge. Leah looked at me, her face pale. "They're not offerings anymore," she said. "They're markers." I didn't understand. But then I looked down at the pennies writhing up from the sand. They weren't scattered. They were outlining something. A figure. Arms, legs, curled into the fetal position beneath the playground. A body. Leah stepped back from the trench, nearly falling. "We didn't bury coins," she said. "We buried memories. Each penny, a child. The town had forgotten. A name never spoken, a life never mourned, and now they wanted out. The clay near the swing began to crack. Fingers pushed through, gray, small, trembling. I couldn't breathe. Then I heard it again, the humming, but not from the swing, from the mirror. Somewhere behind us, in the shadow of the school, a mirror was humming. It shouldn't have been possible. It wasn't a sound, it was a pull inward. Leah turned to run, but the ground beneath her opened. Not all the way, just enough. Enough to show more hands, reaching, not to drag her down, but to ask for something. She dropped to her knees, whispered, "Say his name." I swallowed. My voice shook. Joey Mathers. The humming stopped. The hands withdrew. The pennies fell still. And in that moment, I felt something leave the air. Not a spirit, not a presence, a weight, like a memory finally allowed to die. But when we turned to leave, the swing was moving again. Creak, creak. And this time, two shapes sat side by side. We didn't speak on the walk back to the car, just the crunch of gravel underfoot, the occasional rustle of wind. But the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like waiting, like the town was listening. I dropped Leah off at her house. She didn't go inside right away, just stood on the porch, staring at her front door. "Something's changed," she said. "I don't think it ends with Joey." I knew she was right. The list in the hoodie pocket hadn't stopped at us. There were names neither of us remembered, and that meant the ritual hadn't ended, only shifted. I drove home, didn't turn on any lights, just sat at the kitchen table, the penny from earlier still in my palm. It felt warmer now, like it had a pulse. I opened my laptop, searched Wren, Georgia, missing children. Got nothing. No reports, no archives. It was like the town had eaten its own records. I tried an old forum, one I remembered from high school. Conspiracy threads, urban legends. I searched for the name Joey Mathers, and I found a post, just one, from 2004, no replies. It read, "They don't take the loud ones, they take the quiet ones, the ones who dig, the ones who hum." At the bottom was a question, one line. "How many pennies did you leave?" I closed the laptop, looked at my reflection in the window, and behind me, just for a moment, I saw the shape of a swing, empty, for now. The next morning, I found Leah waiting by the school gate. Her eyes were sunken. She hadn't slept either. She held up a box. It rattled. "Pennies," she said. "Every one I could find." Inside were dozens, some shiny, some green with age, all pulled from coat pockets, couch cushions, junk drawers. I asked what she planned to do. She looked past me, toward the playground. She said, "We put them all back, every single one, for every name." It sounded good, clean, but I felt the wrongness crawling up my spine. "You really think it's about numbers?" I asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "No, I think it's about weight." We walked together to the sand pit. The ground was dry now, cracked in places, like a mouth that hadn't been fed. Leah began placing coins. 1, 2, 3, each carefully pressed into the surface. I joined her. We said the names we could remember: Amber, Joey, Nina, Tyrell, me, her. We got to 54 before we ran out. Leah's hands trembled. "That's not all of them." I reached into my coat pocket, felt one last coin, but when I pulled it out, it wasn't a penny. It was a button. Red, plastic, worn. My breath caught. I remembered it. Joey's hoodie. It had a red button just like this, right at the collar. But it had fallen off years ago, buried in the sand. Until now. The ground shifted, and then something rose. Not a shape, not a body, a whisper. "You remember too late." The coins began to sink, one by one, pulled downward like teeth swallowed by mud. And in the center of the pit, the clay began to bubble. The sandpit hissed, not loud, more like breath escaping sealed earth. Bubbles surfaced in the clay, slow and thick. Each one popped with a sound like a mouth unsealing. And then a hand rose. Small, gray, cracked with drying clay. It pressed against the air like it was still underground, still trying to climb. Leah stepped back, nearly tripping. Another hand surfaced beside it, then a shoulder, then a head. No face, just that same smooth, eyeless mask. But it was humming. We froze, not out of fear, but recognition. It was the same song, the one Joey used to hum, the one we heard from the mirror. The shape pulled itself free of the earth, knees sinking into the coins we'd placed. Then it stopped, tilted its head toward us, and whispered, not aloud, but inside us, "You still forgot one." The coins beneath its feet began to crack, splinter, sink. One fell into the pit, then another, then dozens. The earth rejected the count, and the figure, it began to change. The clay peeled, flaked away in ribbons, and underneath was skin. Pale, human, alive. It was Joey, or it looked like him, until the eyes opened And they weren't his. They were mirrors, reflecting our faces, but smiling back when we weren't. And the thing in his voice said, "One more name, or one of you stays." I looked at Leah. Her lips were moving, counting silently, repeating every name we'd spoken. But it wasn't enough. The thing wearing Joey's face tilted its head again, clay cracking as it moved. "Choose," it said, not with malice, with finality. We were out of pennies, out of names, and running out of time. The coins we had placed were nearly gone now, swallowed by the pit. Leah stepped forward. She reached into her coat pocket, then slowly pulled something out. It wasn't a coin. It was a mirror shard. The same one she'd kept from the art room, the one found behind the painting caked in clay. She held it up toward the thing's face, and for a moment everything froze. The wind, the sounds, even the pit itself. The thing stared at the shard, its mirror eyes locking onto their twin. Its expression, if it had one, shifted, like confusion or regret. Leah whispered, "Is this what you looked like before they forgot?" The figure stepped back, and then it nodded. The mirror shard shimmered, and the face began to fall away again, not violently, but gently, like memory unraveling. And as the clay crumbled, the humming stopped, the coins settled, and the earth finally stilled. The figure collapsed into the pit, not dragged, laid to rest. Leah dropped the shard into the trench and whispered, "Rest easy, Joey." Then we heard it, the last coin tumbling down. Click, click, click. It landed with a soft chime, and the ground closed over it like a mouth finishing a meal. We didn't speak on the way back to the car. Even the sky had gone quiet. That strange, heavy quiet after a storm, except nothing had fallen. Leah stared out the window as I drove. Then she said it. "Do you think it's really over?" I didn't answer, because deep down I knew it never ends in towns like this. It just waits. Back at my place, we tried to list all the names again, wrote them down this time, not on paper, in clay. Leah brought a pack from the art room. We molded the names, one by one. Each one pressed into a slab and left to dry. By midnight, we had 56. We'd only buried 54 coins. That meant 2 were still out there, or already lost. Then I heard the sound from the hallway. Creak, like a door easing open. Leah froze. "Is someone here?" I walked to the hallway. Empty. But the attic door was ajar. A thread of dust floated down from the ceiling, drifting like ash. And below it, on the floor, a single clay footprint, small, bare, pressed into the wood. I called Leah over. She stared at it for a long time, then said, "We forgot to seal the mirror." I felt the breath leave me. We hadn't closed the mirror in the gym, hadn't covered it, hadn't even turned it around. That meant it was still open, still watching, and maybe, just maybe, still remembering for us. I returned to the school alone, told Leah I'd lock the mirror myself. The building was silent, too silent. Even the hum of the vending machines was gone. No lights buzzed, no echo from my footsteps, just stillness. And that smell. Clay, cold, wet, breathing. I unlocked the storage room. The desk was gone, the red hoodie too. Only the mirror remained. Still leaned against the wall, its surface dull now, dusty. I stepped closer. My reflection was wrong. It blinked a half-second too late, smiled when I didn't, and behind it there were swings, two empty, one still swaying. Creak, creak. I whispered Joey's name, then mine, then Leah's. Nothing changed. So I asked, "What do you want?" The mirror rippled, and then came the answer, soft, inside my head, a voice made of sand and breath. To be known. The surface clouded, reflected faces I didn't recognize, children, hundreds of them, all the ones who hummed, all the ones who were quiet, all the ones no one remembered. They pressed their palms to the other side, and for a moment I felt them. Not angry, not vengeful, just waiting. I turned the mirror around, faced it to the wall, nailed it there, sealed it in cloth and clay. I didn't destroy it, because it doesn't want to be broken, just buried. I walked out of the school, locked the doors, and haven't looked in a mirror since.